Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen and enjoy my stories every day. The sun was dipping below the horizon as I turned my car into the driveway, the familiar crunch of gravel under tires a stark contrast to the churn of thoughts in my head. It was Thursday, not the usual Friday when I returned from my business trips. The conference had wrapped up early, a rarity, and I decided to surprise my wife, Ella, with my early return. We'd been married for 6 years, but recently, things had felt off, strained somehow, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. As I approached the front door, my footsteps silent on the soft earth, the faint murmur of voices from inside stopped me dead. The words were muffled, but unmistakably Ella's lilting tone floated through the slightly ajar window. "Come back tomorrow, he won't be home," she whispered, a tinge of excitement lacing her words. A cold knot formed in my stomach, the implications of her words slicing through the quiet evening air like a blade. I stood frozen, the keys in my hand forgotten. My first instinct was to burst through the door, to confront her, but something held me back. Instead, I pushed the door open with a feigned cheerfulness, calling out, "Honey, I'm home early." Ella appeared at the hallway, her smile wide but her eyes flickering with a hint of something akin to panic. "Tom! What a surprise," she exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace me, her perfume a bit too strong, a bit too sweet. I returned her hug, but my mind was racing. Who was she talking to? What was happening here? The evening passed in a blur of forced normalcy. Ella chattered about her day, overly detailed, overly bright. I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the oblivious husband, all the while the poison of doubt seeping deeper into my veins. The next day, I left for work at my usual time, but instead of heading to the office, I parked around the corner, my heart pounding as I waited. The hours ticked by slowly until finally, a car pulled up to the house. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as I watched a figure step out. It was my younger brother, Mike, with his guitar case in hand. His guitar case. Confusion warred with the rising dread inside me. I waited until he disappeared inside before I made my way back to the house, my steps heavy, my mind reeling. The front door was unlocked, and the sounds of laughter echoed down the hallway, a sound so normal yet so entirely foreign in that moment. Pushing the door open, I was met with a scene that would forever be etched in my memory. There in the living room, Ella and Mike were engrossed in a duet, her laughter mingling with the strains of the guitar. It wasn't just any guitar, it was the special edition Fender that Mike cherished above almost everything else. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just an emotional betrayal, it was a betrayal of family, of trust. Having fun? My voice sliced through the music, sharp and cold. The guitar chord died abruptly, and 2 pairs of eyes snapped to mine, wide with shock. Ella's face paled, and Mike stood up abruptly, the guitar hanging awkwardly from his hand. "Tom, it's not." "Save it," I snapped, my voice low, my decision crystallizing in that moment of shattered trust. "I want you out, Ella. And you," I turned to my brother, "I never want to see you again." The divorce was swift, the fallout bitter. I walked away from that marriage, from the brother I thought I knew, and never looked back. But revenge? Revenge was a dish I planned to serve meticulously cold. The days following my split from Ella were filled with a heavy silence that weighed on every moment. My once peaceful home now felt like an echoing chamber of lost trust. Yet, even as the dust settled on the ruins of my marriage, my mind was at work, weaving a plan of cold, calculated retribution. I started by canceling all the credit cards and shutting down the joint accounts, ensuring Ella couldn't bleed me dry financially as she had emotionally. Each click of my mouse was a cathartic step towards reclaiming my life. However, the real game was about to begin, the chess pieces were just being set. I took a day off work, driving out to meet my old college buddy, Rick, who had become a successful lawyer. The cafe was bustling with the lunchtime crowd, but our corner was a quiet alcove, perfect for the kind of discreet conversation we needed to have. "Tom, I can help you make sure the divorce is watertight, but is there something else on your mind? Rick eyed me carefully, his instincts honed from years of reading people in the courtroom. I leaned in, lowering my voice. I want to make sure she regrets this, Rick. Not just now, but for a long time to come. Rick's eyebrows raised slightly, but he nodded, understanding the depth of betrayal I felt. There are legal ways to handle things, and then there are other ways. What are you thinking? It's not enough to just separate our lives. I want her to feel this loss, to realize she made the biggest mistake of her life by betraying me. Rick was silent for a moment, then sighed. Okay, I'll help you. But we keep everything above board, legally. You don't want to end up on the wrong side of this. Grateful, I nodded. We spent the next hour discussing strategies, from influencing her social circle to subtle disruptions of her daily routine, nothing illegal, but enough to ensure her life wouldn't be too comfortable. As the week progressed, I implemented the first part of my plan. Through a mutual friend, I found out about a gallery opening Ella was planning to attend, a big step for her fledgling art career. A few calls from an anonymous enthusiast to key figures raised doubts about the originality of her work, tainting her reputation just enough to spark whispers. The night of the gallery opening, I stood across the street, watching as Ella, radiant in a black evening dress, greeted guests with a bright smile. But as the evening wore on, the smiles around her faded, replaced by hushed tones and sideways glances. I watched her smile falter, her confusion evident as people excused themselves or turned away to whisper. Later, as she stood alone, a glass of wine forgotten in her hand, I felt a pang of something akin to regret, but it was too late to turn back now. I returned home that night, the silence no longer as oppressive. Instead, it was filled with the righteousness of someone who believed they were balancing the scales. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows seemed to whisper a question: was this revenge enough to heal my wounds, or was it just opening new ones? In the quiet, the plan continued to unfold, the storm gathering strength around a woman who was only beginning to realize the depth of her fall. The following weeks blurred into a relentless campaign of retribution. Each step I took was measured, ensuring that Ella's dissent was felt as keenly as the sting of her betrayal. Yet, as her world began to crumble, the emptiness of my own victories grew heavier. One crisp Saturday morning, I decided to visit the cafe where Ella and I had once been regulars, a place filled with memories of better times. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, a sound that used to herald a pleasant start to our weekends. Now, it was just another reminder of what was lost. Sitting at our usual table, I overheard a familiar voice. It was Ella, her tone low and tinged with a sadness that drew my attention despite my better judgment. I just don't understand how everything went so wrong so fast, she was saying to her friend, Sarah, who was listening with a furrowed brow. It's like someone's out to get me. First the gallery, now my job. I heard rumors about my integrity, whispers that I can't be trusted. Sarah reached out, touching her arm gently. Ella, it sounds paranoid, but have you considered that maybe Tom is behind this? The suggestion hung in the air, heavy and ominous. I felt a twinge of guilt but quickly stifled it. This was justice, wasn't it? Yet, as I left the cafe, their conversation haunted me. Back at home, I paced, the walls seeming to close in with every step. The echo of their words, sounds paranoid, reverberated, mixing with memories of our happier days. Was my quest for revenge just a reflection of my own paranoia, my inability to let go? Later that week, driven by a restless urge to see the impact of my actions firsthand, I found myself outside Ella's workplace just as she was leaving. Her steps were slow, her shoulders slumped, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman I once knew. Without thinking, I approached her. Ella. She stopped, her eyes widening in surprise, then hardening. What do you want, Tom? I faltered, the rehearsed lines of anger and betrayal dissolving. I saw you at the cafe. You think I'm behind everything? are you?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes searched mine, looking for the man she once loved. I hesitated, then the truth spilled out. "Yes, I was angry. I wanted you to feel some of the pain I felt." Ella shook her head, a tear escaping down her cheek. "And now? Are you happy, Tom? Is this what you wanted?" The question struck a chord, and in that moment, I saw the futility of my actions. "No, I'm not happy. This isn't what I wanted, not really." We stood there, the cool evening air swirling around, carrying away the last remnants of our shared past. Finally, Ella spoke, her voice softer. "I'm sorry for everything, Tom. But we can't go back." "I know," I replied, the weight of my actions settling around my shoulders. She nodded, wiping her eyes before turning to walk away. Watching her go, I realized that revenge hadn't brought peace, only a deeper loneliness. The echoes of my choices reverberated around me, a reminder that some storms, once started, are not easily calmed. As I walked back home, the path felt different, a road to a future where the hope of redemption seemed both necessary and distant. The days that followed were clouded with a relentless storm of emotions. As Ella walked away from me that evening, something within me shifted. The seeds of revenge that had taken root were now sprouting a bitter harvest, and I knew it wasn't over, not until the full truth came out, not until everyone involved felt the sting of betrayal as I had. Driven by a dark resolve, I dove deeper into the tangled web of our past. My suspicions, once focused solely on Ella, began to shift as I uncovered snippets of conversations and chance remarks dropped over the years that now took on a sinister tone. It wasn't just Ella in this deceit, there were others, shadows in the background of our life together. My brother Mike, whom I had banished from my life, resurfaced in my investigation. The pieces clicked together, forming a picture of betrayal more extensive than I had imagined. The late-night calls, the secretive meetings, it wasn't just an affair. They were plotting a takeover of my family's company, a business that Ella had never shown any interest in, until now. Fueled by this revelation, my plan for revenge escalated. It wasn't just about causing them pain anymore, it was about utter destruction. My first move was to secure my position at the company, rallying loyal allies and legally fortifying my stake. Then, I turned my sights on dismantling their plot from the inside out. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows over the city, I arranged to meet Ella and Mike at a secluded warehouse under the pretense of a truce. They arrived together, tentative and unsuspecting of the trap I had laid. "Tom, why here?" Ella's voice echoed slightly in the vast, empty space. "To end this, once and for all," I stated, stepping out from the shadows. My voice was calm, but my heart hammered against my ribs with ferocious intensity. Mike looked uneasy, glancing around. "What do you mean, Tom?" I laughed, a sound more bitter than joyful. "Oh, you'll see. Did you really think you could steal from me? My wife, my business." Their faces paled as I outlined what I knew, each word laced with venom. I told them about the evidence I had gathered, the legal repercussions they would face, and the social ruin that awaited them. Ella tried to interrupt, her voice shaky. "Tom, we can explain." "There's no need," I cut her off sharply. "I've heard enough lies to last a lifetime." With a flick of my wrist, I signaled the entrance of my security team, who moved in to escort them away. I had alerted the authorities, and they were ready to take over from there. As they were led away, the look of betrayal on their faces was a mirror of what I had felt those weeks ago. But just before they disappeared from sight, Mike turned to me, his expression one of bewildered pain. "Tom, it wasn't supposed to go like this. We were going to include you, eventually. We thought." "You thought wrong," I replied coldly, the finality in my voice sealing the chasm between us forever. As they were taken away, the weight of what I had done settled around me. Yes, I had my revenge, but the cost was etched deeply into the hollows of my soul. The warehouse, once a symbol of potential and growth, stood empty, a hollow echo of my own heart. In the quiet aftermath, the true depth of their betrayal, and mine, settled around me like ash from a fire long burned out. I walked away from that place, from the remnants of relationships destroyed by deception and revenge, knowing that some bridges, once burned, cast light on truths too painful to behold yet too necessary to ignore. As I disappeared into the night, the chapter closed on a life I could never return to, a man I would never again be.